Welcome to the Paul Howarth podcast. And suicide is the biggest single cause of death in males under the age of 50. And last year, there was over 15,000 related deaths to addiction alone. And my guest today is Mark Murray from WhySup organisation, who are at the forefront of tackling mental health and addiction and doing some fantastic work out there in the organisational field. And Mark, you've travelled this path yourself personally. We're going to get into that today. But what I want to ask you is, when you hear stats like that, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, when you first say that, I think of my family members who I've lost, and I didn't know you were going to say that stat. So I often think about my cousin at 21 taking his own life. I've got goosebumps when I say that. And I think about my 19-year-old cousin who took his own life when I was at school. Both on different sides of the family. Both always had a smile on their face. And it's difficult, to be honest. It's just a stat that hopefully we can change through doing work. But yes, like you said, sadly, I think it's the biggest killer from 16 to mid 30s maybe, and that needs to change. Yeah,
and we see it's more prevalent in men. What do you think the biggest barrier is for men?
I know a lot of the time people talk about it's about talking and they don't talk, and to some extent, yeah, maybe we don't. But I think we've got much better at talking over the last few years. What a lot of men do, they have started talking, but I always say there's steps when it comes to asking for help. So we often hear the biggest and most important step is asking for help. So people put their head above the parapet a lot better now and say, I'm struggling. But I still think people struggle to take them next steps. That might be therapeutic help. It might be going to a support group or whatever it might be. So I just think it is important that we ask for help, but it's really important that we follow up with some steps, because if you're at the point of feeling suicidal, just talking about it isn't enough. You usually need some therapeutic support or support from a community.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. And I want to talk to you about addiction as well.
Yeah.
Because it's a path very familiar to both of us.
Yeah.
When you hear those stats related to addiction itself, can you just put a bit of meat on the bones around that? Because the work you're doing out in the field and obviously what you've been through yourself with it, when you experience people living through addiction, what goes on for you? What's the framework for them to work with?
Yeah, I think obviously when you say the word addiction, and I know both of us have struggled with it, you still have that stereotype of what you think addiction is. When you think about them obvious ones that we've spoke about for years of drink, drugs, maybe gambling in recent years, they're the obvious ones that we've always spoke about. But what I think about now is how it can take many forms. You know, it can be in everyday society, shopping, food, exercise, sugar. And then the modern ones with things like phones. So the landscape now and how you look at addiction is changed, especially with the digital world. But I still go back to what it meant to me, and it meant destruction. It meant a lot of unhappiness. Always asking the question, why do I keep going back to it? And I think that's a big sign of addiction. Even though there's negative consequences and adverse consequences, you're still going back and you can't put your finger on it. Why? So I always go back to sort of what my personal experience of it is. But on the flip side, now I'm working in education, I'm working in businesses, and I still see the things that were happening all them years ago, where people, if you imagine addiction being in 3 stages of a habit, a problem, addiction, people still wait until they're at crisis point, and at the stage of addiction before they do something about it. And I get it, you've got to reach rock bottom, or you feel like you do sometimes, but we're really trying to change it where you can see it becoming something, a substance or a behaviour becoming problematic, and either changing your relationship with it. It's not always about going to rehab, where most people wait until their life's completely unmanageable and go, I need something here, I need something to change.
Why is that? Why do we wait until the destruction?
I suppose you've got to experience things like pain and go through certain situations to know that you've had enough. And I did it at 21. I walked into a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and what that did for me is I looked around and thought, oh, I'm not as bad as these. he's been to prison, he's lost his wife. And when I say he, back then in the Gamblers Anonymous meeting, it was all men.
Okay.
Now it's 30% women, that same meeting
Really?
that I go to. Wow. So it shows things are changing. When I walked in a Bookies, it was all men, and you had to physically go and walk in a Bookies. Now you can have a Bookies or a casino in your pocket. So the world's changed, but I'm not sure, but I feel like education and prevention is real key from a young age. We try, and what we do in schools with WhySup is offer a real world education. These are the things that you're going to come across if you're not already doing. And look at addiction in its own right. Look at what it is. Because I think if you teach young people and educate them on what addiction looks like, they can sort of put that in different areas of their life. Because if I'm delivering my lived experience story talking about gambling, I don't want to switch people off.
Yeah.
Think, well, I'm never going to gamble, or I've not gambled now, so therefore. But if you teach people about addiction, they can look at it and think, well, actually, I'm like that with social media. And I've spoke about that yesterday in a school. I did an example on stage and said, this was me walking in a bookmaker's with a plan. I'd always think, I'm going to go in for 10 minutes, I'm going to have one small bet, and I'm going to go over, and then the roulette machine catches my eye, and I turn around and I go on the roulette machine, and before the next minute, I've been in there for 4 hours and I've got no money left. Yeah. That's similar to social media now with young people. They have a long day at school, they've got a phone ban. So the first thing they do, right, I'm just going to go on there for 10 minutes. And before you know it, they've seen a video that they like, they're on to the next. And 4 hours later, they're still scrolling away. And it's similar. It's very, very similar patterns across lots of substance and behaviours.
It's a great point, is that. So we take a step back. How would you define addiction?
Yeah, it's a tough one, that, because if you got 100 people with lived experience, they'd all say different things. And if you got 100 professionals, they've all got different things. What I would say is it's the continued repetition of a substance or a behaviour that you keep going back to despite adverse consequences.
Yes.
So even though these consequences in your life are around a negative impact, you always end up back there.
Yeah.
And then you're asking yourself, why?
Yeah.
Why? And you know, a lot of people, I work with a lot of families now, and these families love the addict that's going through it. They want to support them. But if love could save addiction, then do you know what? There'd be a lot less people in treatment or in recovery rooms. I was very loved off my mum, but it's them adverse consequences, and you keep going back and you're scratching your head thinking why.
I think one of the key bits to that is the behaviour, any behaviour, and that's important, isn't it? Because I think psychologically we have it's alcohol, it's drugs or heroin or gambling, but the behaviour can be work, shopping, like you say, phones. Yeah. And it's the negative impact afterwards. We keep returning to it. That makes so much sense. You mentioned there families and love.
Yeah.
And I think of the power of addiction and why we do it, and understandably when there's shame involved in it, we try and deny the what's going on around us to try and protect ourselves from feeling that. How difficult is it? Because you end up in this dynamic with loved ones that do everything and try everything, but they're obviously powerless over the person that's in addiction. It's difficult, very difficult, because where love's present, there's also a lot of pain. What do you see in that for how family, and if you have any advice or suggestion from your experience of doing this, what gives the best success rate for families in how to deal with it?
It's really tough, and I feel like I'm better placed advising other families when you're not emotionally involved. Yeah. But if it was my children now going through it and the emotion is involved, it's so tough. What worked for me and what I always advise people is be delicate with it, but be quite direct. If you are worried about a family member, put it out in the open and set clear boundaries and try and not move them goalposts. So an example for that in my own personal journey is me and my mum were like that growing up, which had its positives and negatives, to be honest. We were quite reliant on each other.
Yep.
But my mum bailed me out of a lot of situations through love through fear because I was in trouble a lot of the time. When my mum turned that tap off when I was 28, 29 and shut the door, literally shut the door, and I was on the other side, please let me in. She said no, and that was a turning point for me.
Wow.
She stopped, and I thought, she'll come back. Well, I didn't consciously think it. I just thought, we'll fix that tomorrow. And I didn't speak to my mum for maybe 18 months. That door was shut until I went and do something about it. That said, I can't always advise families to do that because you still do worry that if something happens, you've got to do what works for you, because people always think, well, what if, he or she takes their own life or they lose their life for addiction. It's really tough.
Yeah.
But to sort of address it earlier on, it's like put the problem out in the open, always encourage professional help and support, and try and stay calm. Yeah. Someone asked me the other day, how did your mum handle it? And I had to answer it honestly. There was a lot of emotion and a lot of anger at times with my mum, and I never felt like the conversation went anywhere other than shouting.
Yeah.
But I understand why she was shouting. It's so tough. But yeah, it's a family illness, and usually the family see it before the addict. So if I could look at them 13 years of addiction through my mum's lens, I'd probably be horrified, to be honest. But you're living inside your own head, and usually the person with the problem is the last person to see the extent of what is going on. You know it's a problem, but you're convincing yourself, I'll get out of it. I'm not an addict. I'm going to work, this, that, and the other. I'm not on a park bench. Yeah. All these things. I don't even think I even thought of the word addiction when I was going through it. Yeah. I just thought it was a problem and I can sort it myself, but I needed help.
It's a real conflict in it because you love the person, so you try and rescue them and take them out of it.
Yeah.
But in doing that, you're actually enabling it, and actually for the parent or the caregiver, the individual becomes their drug.
Yeah.
And that becomes addictive as a cycle.
Yeah.
Looking at it in that context. We mentioned families there, and the origins of addiction and where it comes from, and family units. What's your view on that? Because it starts, everything has an origin, and you can keep going back, can't you, and back and back and back.
Yeah.
But I just wondered what your view on that was.
Yeah, I think there's different things when it comes to addiction. I think sometimes it can be your environment or a traumatic event that sparks something off. I do believe sometimes it can be genetics. Okay. I got diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago, low on dopamine, so there's a probability that things could get out of balance for me, or I was chasing dopamine in certain areas. But I probably put it back to my dad. My dad was absent in my life from the age of 4, and then returned at 16. He was actually the person that introduced me to gambling.
Okay.
And people always ask me, do you think if your dad didn't come back in your life, you would have ended up taking the path that you did? And I'm always honest and say, I think if my dad never returned, I still would have been an addict. And funnily enough, when I met my dad, even though he wasn't around, I could see myself in him. And I was thinking, I'm all or nothing. I have a plan and it can go that way because of, substance or behaviour. Or I used to certainly be that way. So I think there's a lot of different factors when it comes to it, but I certainly think, there were certain things in my genetics that I was probably, things could get out of balance for me. So I don't blame it on anyone.
Yeah.
It was just the way I was, yeah.
I've spoke about this quite a lot, and people ask about the origins of it, and I think it isn't successful to try and pin it on one thing, because it's never one thing.
Yeah.
So the idea is to try and connect the dots for yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like some of that, and obviously the path goes on, more life moves on, things become clearer down the line.
Yeah.
If you stay with that curiosity, but. You said then that you still feel like you would have gone on that path. So, 4-year-old Mark, absent father for the next 12 years.
Yeah.
Why would you have carried on?
Why would I have
down the path of addiction?
Still ended up? Because I think there were signs from school, probably with more mental health, not necessarily addiction. example, my mum got me a sort of gaming console when I was about 7, 8. And I remember going on it for hours on end, and then my mum coming in telling me to turn it off. So I pretend I go to sleep and I go back on it. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm still on it. My mum just come in and went, "You're not doing that. You're not having it again." And I'm a bit upset, but she sort of removed that away from me. But when it came to mental health, I always thought I had a happy childhood, but I had things going on.
Yeah.
I was a terrible overthinker. I was a worrier about things. I had this attachment with my mum where I was constantly worrying about losing my mum, because I'd always think, well, my dad's not here, so if my mum isn't here, then who've I got? And some of my friends have spoke to me now saying, "Do you remember when we were walking to school to me and you were talking about your mum dying?" Well, I didn't, and I was quite embarrassed when he said that. So there was things going on with the way I felt, my thoughts, feelings and emotions, that I had a few things going on. And what I always say is football was my healthy escape as a kid. I'd play football every hour of every day if I could. And I did well at that, but it was like that thing. And then for me, I think it was no coincidence that I got released from Man City at 16, and then the next minute my dad comes back in my life, and weeks after I started gambling.
Yep.
So I was always looking for an escapism, and I do think addiction a lot of the time is escapism. But for me personally, I can't blame my dad on that. I think things were out of balance for me before that. I just think my dad introduced it to me, and I was like, I'm going with it.
I mean, it makes absolute sense why you would be an overthinker, because you're left with all the questions.
Yeah.
You know, your dad's gone at 4.
Yeah.
You know that you're going to want things. You're going to try and work out why and what that's about. So the overthinking makes sense, and the attachment to your mum makes total sense, because it's the caregiver that's there, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that makes so much sense to me as that path goes on. And you find football, you find that identity of football, and then one day that's not there, and we see this quite a lot. I know that's a path that I struggled with myself coming out of it. Tell me about that reuniting with your father.
Yeah.
And the leaving Man City at the time.
Yeah.
And what that was like for you.
Yeah.
That, because the two big things.
Well, there was 3 big things in that. I always say 16 for me was this perfect storm. I was doing well at football, and I want to make clear as well, my story isn't. I'm proud of where I got in football.
Yeah.
My mum didn't drive. I caught the buzz all over the Northwest. I overachieved. I got to places that I shouldn't have done, and I got it through resilience and grit. But there were players that were more talented than me. And I probably do myself a disservice. I'd played for the town team, the county. I got player of the year for the town team. I was good centre half. But then I spent a bit of time at Bolton, went to Man City, and I always had this thing of thinking, I'm not good enough. Now, I know a lot of people say that, but it wasn't that. I was thinking, I knew I wasn't good enough. There were players that were better than me. So I just thought, do you know what? I might have reached my limit here.
Yeah.
And around this time, my dad comes back in my life, or makes contact with me. But aside to that, probably the biggest life-changing event for me at 15 was finding out I was going to be a dad. All the eyebrows. I did a presentation in a school yesterday, and I'm looking at 250 faces, and I found out I was going to be a dad at 15, and I just see a lot of eyebrows do this.
Sure.
Yeah, my mum was a family planning nurse, so I think she left the job shortly after that. That was a massive thing for me.
Wow.
That was not a plan. It wasn't something I consciously thought, do you know what, I want to be a dad. But it happened through me not thinking about long-term consequences, risks. You always think, that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
Well, it did. And it was, you're going to be a dad. And I begged my mum not to tell Man City. So I was going to training, and they seen me progressing. And at times, as much as I said I wasn't good enough, they were talking potentially about YTS. But I didn't tell them at the club. And I had this thing in my head, rather than them find out, I hope they release me so they don't find out. And I bumped into my old coach a while ago and told him this story. And he said, Was I scary? Was I that scary? I said, yeah. He said, am I scary now? I said, no, absolutely not. But as a 16-year-old, I was. It was. So I ended up getting the phone call, or my mum got a phone call. He's not, and my mum regrets not turning around and saying, you do realise he's become a dad. Like, he's got quite a big thing going on. But instead, it was just like I wasn't where I was the year before.
Yeah.
So I ended up being told, yeah, that wasn't going to do. And it was a relief. And I pretended to cry. I pretended, oh, that's upsetting. I was glad.
Yeah.
I was glad that they didn't find out that I'd become a young dad. When people were finding about it in the changing rooms, I was playing for Greater Manchester County, and I remember my mates going, "Have you got a girl pregnant?" And they were all laughing, and I'm being one of the lads and like, yeah, like I'm dealing with it. I was crying myself to sleep.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. And then I get a phone call one day, off my dad, son, heard you've gone through a tough time, love to get to know you, come and meet me on Saturday. And I'm thinking, great, like he can watch me play football, come and meet me at the pub. And I walked in a pub as a 16-year-old, 15, 16, and my dad's there. And yeah, I just thought, great, and gives me 20 quid, that's your gambling money. And the rest is history, as they say. And what that meant is that day I was going to run back and forth, putting his bets on all day.
Okay.
But what it gave me, it was the first time in a long time that I'd forgot about life.
Yeah.
I'd forgot about being a dad. I'd forgot about the pressure that football gave me to some extent.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And I just thought, I enjoyed that. So it wasn't this conscious thing of I'm physically escaping from my situation. It was just that I switched off from what was going on. And that can be addiction a lot of the time. You know, most addictions start off with a little bit of fun with someone close to you, a friend, a family member, having a laugh with your mates.
Yep.
And that's what it was. I was underage at the time. And I think also my dad was, just to say it out loud, hope he doesn't listen to this back, but he was irresponsible of taking me. I probably needed an arm around my shoulder and like sitting down and saying, I'm sorry for being absent. But my dad's way of bonding with me and thinking he's being a dad was taking me in a pub and a bookies, and that's where it started for me.
Yeah. Wow. Did you ever get that sorry off him?
Did I ever get an arm round?
I've
I've never been asked that, but I've never had it off him.
Yeah.
Never. He's still in my life, and I can talk about this today. He's still in my life, but I've had to change my relationship, and I've had to accept. I've craved it. I have craved it, and I don't mean craved it where I'm sat there at night crying about it. I don't think I've ever cried about my dad.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't. I'd probably cry if he passed away.
Yeah.
More in a little bit of frustration, thinking that it could have been a lot better. But my dad's had a bit of a challenging upbringing. That's how his relationship with his father would have been.
Yeah.
He was running away from home at 14, 15. So it was his way of bonding with me. I think he loves me, but he's a terrible avoider. My dad, he struggles really. And it's funny, I've really changed my relationship with my dad. And I think what recovery gives you is a lot of clarity about people.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
You have this perception of what people are, and then you're in recovery with a clear head and you think, actually, it's not all my fault of
100%.
Why they are. So I go around my dad's now for a brew, and I sit there and he doesn't speak, and he's can't make eye contact, and then if you got him in a pub, he'd not stop talking.
Yeah.
And that's what my relationship was with my dad for a long time.
He's so it always fascinates me. When I was saying before about the origin, and you mentioned then about him running away at 14.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the same boy and the man that's running away down the line. And these things, they do pass down, don't they? Until someone or something. And I was reflecting on this because I heard it, and I've seen you see a lot of posts out there about until someone in the family like decides to stop. And I'm thinking, is that there's quite a lot of ego and martyrism in that.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. I haven't drank now for over 10 years, but that was through desperation, not because I wanted to be a hero in the family lineage. It was like I was out of options, and of course I could have carried on. down that path, and I did change it. But there's a grieving process, isn't there? For like, in a way, even though the physical father is there, it's for maybe the father of the relationship that you never had.
Yeah.
The emotional grieving of that.
Yeah.
And what's really struck me twice with that, and this is the bit that I just find so fascinating, is our life experience is based on the meaning that we give to situations. Yeah. And I know you were saying about when you come from Man City and you were like, oh, actually, I think that I did all right and I got to where I did in my career.
Yeah.
Have you always felt like that, or did you feel like you were and then it's later in life when you've been able to look back and reframe it and say, well, actually, I did all right there.
Yeah.
Because we carry these things, and also looking back, anger towards, dad, mum, whatever. And then as you go forward in life, it's like, well, actually, as you change and do the work, the meaning that you give to situations change, and therefore your life experience changes, because that really is what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that is one of our superpowers as a human being, what separates us.
Yeah.
The ability to be able to look at a situation and apply different meaning to it.
Yeah. Massive that. I've never heard it put like that, but yeah.
So your experience, how have this shifted over the years? Because you've been through, tell us about your journey through addiction and finding the other side of it. 'Cause it'd be great just to put a bit more meat on the bones. But with that, I'm really keen to understand how over that period of time your meaning towards different people and places and situation has evolved.
Yeah. One thing I will say is I'm still learning now.
Absolutely.
Always learning about myself, and you have these moments. So I certainly look at things differently. But I think when you're going through addiction, you're in a bubble. You don't know what's going on, and you don't ever consciously think I'm an addict until you probably find recovery and you learn about it and you think, oh, hang on, I have been struggling with addiction for some time. People can go through addiction over a period of time, progressive over a 20-year period, and something happens that they turn that screw and the relationship changes with it. Some people in a short space of time, I'd say I was showing signs of addiction by placing my first bet at 16. I was showing signs of addiction at 16, losing my money, walking outside. How do I get that money back? Chasing my losses, destruction, impact on relationships and career. But how it unfolded for me is my first experience was with my dad. I then get released from Man City. I get a job. I always had a good work ethic. I always prided myself on showing up on time, working hard. So every time I'd start off at a job, people would say, you can do really well here. And I always thought I can do well, but alongside it, I was forming a relationship with addiction. So them problems that were happening, I would say I'd lost control by 17. A habit you control, you lose control. Addiction controls you. Yeah. That's not a cop-out to say it was the addiction's fault, but I'd lost all control by 17, and what came with that were the consequences and financial problems and relationship breakdowns. And then when I was 21, I ended up owing some quite nasty people money, and they attacked me, and all these things happened, and there were all these things which should have been my rock bottom. And what my mum kept doing is, please tell me the truth. I don't think you know what the truth is in addiction, because you're really good at lying to yourself. You're brilliant at lying to others and manipulating situations. I don't know if you're even consciously know you're doing that half of the time, but I didn't think I had an addiction. I thought I had a financial problem. So I always thought if someone came along and paid all my debts off, I'd never go back to it. Yeah. Well, that happened a few times. And what I would do is then I would think, well, I've got a clean slate and now I'm going to go back into it and control it. Yep. So I'm just going to have £5 a week. Well, that's like an alcoholic turning around and saying it's the vodka that's causing me the problems. I'm going to go on to lager. Yep. And that's what it was for me. But on the outside, I was hitting milestones that I should have been. So I was an apprentice electrician, then an estimator, and then a short while after that, I went back to uni, studying a degree, and was training as an assistant QS. The irony of that, like managing money for a construction company, I couldn't manage my own money. And I always knew then at this point in my early 20s that I'd ruin it. I always went into something thinking potential, but you're going to ruin it because this problem's not going away.
Yep.
And what I always tried to do is I'd get it become unmanageable, and then I'd change my job or change my environment. And in my mid-20s, that meant running away.
Yep.
I had 2 children at this point. My mum was just upset all the time. The rest of my family. In particular, I remember one situation with my uncle, and you say when my dad was absent, I leant towards my mum's brother as being my male role model.
Okay.
He was my hero growing up. I've got photos on his shoulders. He took me to Wanderers match. So when that relationship broke down, I've got goosebumps when I say this bit because, of course, it was devastating in my mum. But these moments in time where my uncle grabbed me by the throat and he said, "I'll never speak to you again after what you've done. You've let yourself down." I remember looking at him thinking, he hates me. And I was devastated by it.
Yeah.
I was devastated what I was doing to my mum. And that's a big sign of addiction. You're hurting all these people, but you keep going back and back. So in my mid-20s, I run away from it. I went to a place called Sark in the Channel Islands. I got a job washing pots in a kitchen. Told everyone I was travelling. I think you're really good at reinventing yourself when you're in the thick of it, of you've got potential. People think, oh, he's a nice guy. And I was, but a lot of my behaviours weren't nice and moral compass was all over the place. But I always went into things caring, kind, like being there for others, but my behaviours would eventually cut that up. And spent 12 months inside. There was no bookies, casino, so I thought I can't get in trouble. But then I started online gambling, which meant I could gamble anywhere in the world then. Then I got to Dublin for 12 months because my dad had gone over there, setting a construction company. He did a lot of work on churches and heritage buildings. Rest of my family are over there. When I say that, on my dad's side. And then shortly after that, my cousin was over with us at the time, working with us. He was my younger cousin, but much taller than me. Like me, promising footballer, teammate of Micah Richards up until the age of 16. He was Oldham Athletic. Micah went to Man City. He got released. My cousin did the degree, hit all the milestones and was doing really well. And he had a relationship breakup. And shortly after being in Dublin with him, he went home and took his own life. And it's these moments in time, and this is a big thing when it comes to addiction. My cousin takes his own life. I remember being in shock. I remember wondering what grief was about, because sometimes I'd cry, but then sometimes I'd look at other people crying and think, why am I not crying now? I felt like my emotions were quite suppressed in addiction. I carried his coffin, but then my relationship with gambling, actually, you'd think, people would often think, well, this is a turning point now for you. You've just lost your cousin to suicide. You need to sort yourself out. But what an addict does in that, they turn to the thing that they've always done. They've got a dysfunctional way of dealing with stress. Straight back to gambling, drinking more, binge drinking, not consistent with drinking, but always just to oblivion. So I stayed away for 2 years, and then I came back to Bolton, and these people that I owed money to were waiting for me. You're back, we want our money back. And then I just spiralled then of robbing Peter to pay Paul and going to all different people. Got another good job, like a national sales manager. Worst job ever. My office is my car. So I'm crying sometimes in my car and walking in a meeting and holding myself, oh, you're doing well. But I always knew I was kicking things down the road and things were going to come out that I wasn't doing the job that I was meant to be doing. Yeah. Because I was trying to win this money back. In the end, I lost my family. My family did shut the door on me. They were angry, they were upset. I thought that meant they didn't love me anymore. I kept thinking, well, what's the point in getting better if everyone's cut me out anyway? I'm not allowed to see my kids. My mum shut the door on me. The rest of my family hate me. I never thought about me and what it was doing to me. And I lost my house. I got kicked out of a rented house. I ended up back on a psychiatric ward. I'd had suicide attempts loads, and I'd have suicide attempts sometimes and have 2 weeks off work and go back in and say I've been unwell. Maybe sometimes touching on depression. Got things going on with the kids. It's the CSA, it's this, it's that. It wasn't. I was absolutely rock bottom, but I was always good at sucking it up, going back in work.
Yeah.
And I don't like the word functioning. I was hanging on
Yeah.
with dear life, but because I was capable of doing bits of good work, it sort of masked over it.
Yeah.
But it all came to a head. And people always say, what was your rock bottom? I got attacked. I ran off to different countries. I lost jobs. I'm ashamed. My mum's in flood of tears. I just got weary. I just thought, I used to dread waking up.
Yeah.
So actually, I slept in addiction. People always say, oh God, I hope you weren't sleeping with owing all this money. I was that exhausted through living as an addict and surviving day on day. I'd shut my eyes and I'd say the only time I had happiness was if I had a nice dream, because I'd wake up and I'd open my eyes and I'd be like, I've got to get through this day. And then what came with that is my option were, I win the money back and it'll fix everything, or I take my own life.
Yeah.
Not help. Because I always thought, how can that fix my financial problem? Because if I go to rehab or go back to GA, they're just going to be like, well, you need to do this, and it's day by day. Well, I needed this fixing now. Yeah. And that was a realisation for me when I started to get the help that, it was going to be a long process, but it all starts off with putting one foot in front of the other. And I did. I rang a rehab at 29, and I was met with calmness on the other side of the phone. They dealt with a lot of people like me, and they told me there's a 4-week wait, and I said, please, I can't wait 4 weeks. And they fast-tracked it to 2 weeks. Then I went and knocked on my mate's door and said, I know I owe you a few £100, and I said I'd pay you back, and I've been avoiding you, but I've got a place in a rehab. And he said, come in, don't be daft, get on my couch. And I had this time with my best mate who I'd met at 6-year-old, been his best man since and stuff, lay on his couch, and we were talking about being kids. And the strange thing about that is his two brothers are heroin addicts. And in a way, my best mate, who I lent towards at school, was living with addiction without even me knowing it. And he helped save my life. But he'd already been prepped because his two brothers, he knew what addiction was. He was never going to walk away from me, just as he's never walked away from his brothers. But I almost felt like we met at primary school, and that's the lad that said, come on, I'll put my arm around you. So he took me to rehab. I arrived at rehab and I looked at it, and I wanted the help. I gambled the Friday before I went in, and I owed one person 30 grand and 10 times more that to other people. And I don't really want to talk about figures, because sometimes people listen to it and think, well, I don't owe that much, so it's not a problem.
Yeah.
So it's not about the figures, but I'd lost for such a long time gambling. And on the Friday before I went to rehab, I nearly won that money. I got that far up, I just couldn't stop winning. And I started being quite erratic in the bookmakers. And it was the only time in 13 years the manager who knew my name came over to me. She said, Mark, you've put 2 bets on at the same race. She said, can I ask, are you insane? It always stuck with me, that. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I am insane. Just leave me alone. And she stepped back. But there was no really well-being checks then. But it was strange that the Friday before I was finally going to get help. And what it was is, at rehab, you had to pay a service charge. It was funded, which was very fortunate. When I say funded, by external providers. So the gambling, I think it was the gambling industry or part of it, Gamble Aware and people like that, funded this residential treatment. But you had to pay a £200 service charge. And I collected that day. So I knew I was ready, because I never collected money in the bookies. And I'd gone from nearly a really big amount down to 400 and pressed collect. So I knew I had enough. And I left the bookies and walked up to my mates up the road. Said, get me there on Monday. And he took me. And then when I arrived there, that doesn't look like a rehab. What does a rehab even look like? But in that building were strangers that I'd never even met before, which I think sometimes is what you need. People who are not involved in your situation. I got welcomed with open arms, and I spent 9 months in there. And that is the foundation of my recovery, of what I learned in that building. And a lot of it was looking after your mental health, self-care, prioritising that. and I learnt a lot. I got an education in rehab, did intensive CBT, rewired the way I thought about a lot of things, and then thought, I was going to be forgiven now. My family are going to have a party when I get back, and they've got the boy back. And I came home to all the hurt and destruction. So
it takes time.
Yeah, I had to rebuild.
Thanks for sharing that. There's a real depth to it, and there's a couple of things that come up for me with it. And the first thing is that the addiction, although you're unaware of it at the time, is the security that you're going towards in a world that feels insecure.
Yeah,
you find momentary security in whatever that is, gambling, drugs, drink, whatever. And it's that you don't want to let go of, which makes sense. Yeah. It's a polarity, isn't it? It's hurting you. I mean, it now actually makes sense why you'd want to hold on to it, because it's the very thing that's keeping you safe.
Yeah.
Keeping that very early part of you safe that's terrified.
Yeah.
Which has got its origins from. And the other thing is, if anyone's listening to this, and I've seen this a million times, and I know you have as well through the journey, no matter how bad it gets, never ever underestimate the power of another human being's compassion. Because when you're ready, when you're really ready to go, I'm fucking done.
Yeah.
Someone will appear.
Yeah.
The door will open. It just fucking will. And I think that's the depth of human compassion that we have. Grace, faith, you know. So the game's never fully up.
Yeah.
Because there's a door that's always open, and a lot of that is down to the fundamentals of human behaviour. And tell me about that period of time. I know you touched on there the work that you'd done when you come out of rehab. The rebuild.
Yeah.
You know, you've come out thinking everything was going to be all right. I'm sure some bits of it were, other bits of it weren't. It takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it should take time.
Yeah, I think you become a little bit impatient in addiction. So just like when you gamble, you don't want to go. When I gambled, I didn't want to go the long way around. It was like I wanted it all there and then. So I had this thing in the back of my head that maybe in 2 years my life will be fixed, or a couple of years, and I thought that was a hell of a long time, even putting a label like 2 years on it. One thing I had to learn was, I did like an assessment with a psychotherapist on day 3 in rehab, and they did like a life audit, and I got it back. It was quite interesting, really. They almost told me why I gambled. They explained I formed a relationship with my father through gambling, and most young people form a relationship in their early years. So the dad's a builder, they want to be a builder. And funnily enough, my first only memory of my dad is him building a fireplace and me having my Lee jeans on and following him around and rubbing mud because he had mud on his jeans. And I'm thinking, he's my dad. Then the next time is, I loved looking at my dad in pulling wads out when he'd won money in the bookies. Yeah. And it was like this attachment that I had, and I formed a relationship. Yeah. But they also told me I developed from a young age a dysfunctional way of dealing with stress, which was avoidance.
Understandable.
So I've found, like, I've been released from Man City, I've become a dad, and I find something here that actually makes me feel better. So it was a safety net for me that I could escape and switch off from all this trouble that was going on. So when they told me this, I'm like, okay. When I realised what that was is when I got out. And when I didn't have that escapism there and I had to feel stress for the first time, I thought, I've gone through such a stressful time that my life is going to be pretty plain sailing now, because I'm not going to put myself in them situations. If anything, dealing with the day-to-day normal stress that we all face hit me like a sledgehammer. I thought, how am I going to cope? I can't even cope with these small situations. So I got out of rehab, and as much as I'd said there was an 18-month period of me and my mum, actually she made contact when I was right at the end of my period in rehab and said, I want to see you. And I drove and met her, and she basically was upset about something and started offloading on me. And that's when I realised that rehab had helped, because I just said, I met it with calmness. I didn't meet it with emotion. I said, Mum, I'm not ready for this yet.
Yeah.
I don't feel safe in this environment, and I'm going to go back to the halfway house. She said, no, we've got some plans. And I said, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
I promise I'll try and fix things over a period of time. And I thought I've changed there. But then I realised, you know what? I've got to find different ways to deal with the stresses of life.
Yeah.
And I have got a dysfunctional way of dealing with stress. Alongside all that, and it's no coincidence this, when I was in rehab, I started becoming quite sick. I started going to the toilet a lot. I was losing blood, I was losing weight. I actually lost 4 stone over a 9-month period. I was in and out of hospital, in and out of the doctors. What is going on? In my head, I'm thinking, I've hurt a lot of people over the last few years. Is this God's way of sending something my way? Because it's like evening things out. I did think that. Finally got a diagnosis. I had ulcerative colitis, which is inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune. Now, again, that can be genetics, and I've no doubt it was potentially going to happen, but it was no doubt brought on by my system being in fight or flight, constantly never switching off. And I know that now because over the last 12 years of managing this, my illness is dictated by how much stress I've got in my life and how I'm handling it.
Yeah.
So actually, it was the perfect time because my tools that I learned in recovery allowed me to deal with my inflammatory bowel disease, which is brutal at times. There's been times in the last 12 years I've had accidents, being out in public. I'm a public speaker, probably worst job you could ever have when you've got colitis is being stood on a stage in front of 250 people. It's tough that, but I make sure I take the professional's advice. I try and look after myself and I try and manage it. And funnily enough, last 6 months I've found ways and coping strategies alongside medication that I'm in remission for the first time in 12 years. But back to the recovery side, there wasn't a 2-year period. I got out, I had no job, I was sick, I relocated to the Midlands, and it all started for me with the basics. I got a flat and I went viewing this flat and it had painted walls black and it was small as it was, and I looked and I rang my mum. I had no car. I'm on the bus going back to the halfway house at rehab. I said, Mum, that flat's quite dingy. She said, you'll make it nice. And I thought, how do I start my journey having my own house? I'm going to get a tin of paint. And I got a tin of paint and I painted the walls, and I then saved up and got a couch, and I got things donated me by some fantastic charities, some white goods, a fridge and stuff like that for people who left rehab. And then I goes to the stationery shop, and I thought, I used to chuck my mail away. I'll just chuck it in the back of the car. I'm going to open my mail and I'm going to correspond to people. If they're chasing debts and things like that, I'm going to write back to them. I'm going to offer a £1 payment because I'm only on 72 quid a week.
That behaviour there, and this is important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because one's the avoidant, which is the pattern.
Yeah.
And starting with a small win, just opening the mail, challenges the pattern in the brain.
Yeah. Small, simple steps that people think, that's pretty easy. You're not doing anything special there. But it just started off with putting one foot in front of the other. And alongside that, I was prioritising myself. I started saying no. Yeah. So my best friend, my other best friend, stag do. I can't come on that. Come on, I'll pay for you. No, I'm not accepting money for you, but I don't want to be there. Me and you will go for a walk when we get back. And he says in that moment, that's when I knew there was a change. Yeah. And I just started putting one foot in front of the other. And as I'm doing that, I then start thinking with clarity. And I tell you what the biggest thing, Paul, was I had no smartphone for 9 months.
Interesting.
And my brain was on fire. I was thinking, I thought of about 10 different businesses that I could do. One of them, which was this. And this started off as an idea on a notepad. I want to do something. I don't know if I want to do therapy. I'd volunteered at the rehab for 2 years. So that was the only thing that I did work-wise. I'd catch the bus there and I'd fill people's forms in when they arrived at rehab. And I'd say, when I was in here, and they'd go, you was in here, are you doing all right? And I'd say, yeah, I'm 6 months now, and I'm 9 months, and I'm 12 months. So it was just them tiny steps of progression. If I would have thought of what 5 years look like what 12 years, it would have scared me.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a time on it. And I don't think we should put a timestamp, because to some extent, 12 years in, I'm still recovering.
Yeah.
But I did, in the back of my head, I had to rebuild relationships. I had to rebuild trust. My expectations of others was, you should forgive me now. I've done my prison sentence, which was 9 months in rehab.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that. They didn't trust me when I got back. And I felt hurt by that. I remember being at my mum's 50th, hiding at the bottom of the garden, my family blanking me, and me underneath resenting them.
Yeah.
Thinking, do you not love me? Why can you not say well done? So I had a lot of learning. I talk about that to people in treatment now. And I'd rebuilt my relationships with my kids, and that was really healthy. But I was single for some time. And then eventually, I was still on benefits when I met my soon-to-be wife now, and we started talking. And again, avoidance. I looked at my bank account. She said, do you want to go for a coffee? And I thought to myself, let me look at my bank account. And I looked and I thought, I hope she doesn't ask for a cake, because if she does, I'm screwed, because I haven't got the money for a cake. So in my head, please cancel, please cancel, please cancel. How can I cancel? She seems a nice girl. I don't want to let her down or lie to her. But so the easiest thing in that situation would have been her to cancel.
Yeah.
And the night before, she messages me and says, I'm really nervous about tomorrow. And I thought,
Wow.
oh, she'll do for me, because I'm quite nervous.
Honesty,
Yeah.
Vulnerability.
And I met her and said, do I get a second date? I thought I enjoyed that, but maybe we'll go for a walk next time, because I'm skint after that coffee. I've had 2 children with that girl. This week we've booked our wedding. It's been a long time in the making, but through business, I bought my previous partner out. We moved the goalposts a bit. I'm getting married to her. I've got 2 kids. We've bought our own house. She's my soulmate. She works for WhySup now. I'm authentic with her.
Yeah.
I'm in this relationship. I'm not sat there like a Buddhist monk in recovery every day and meditating. Some days I react to certain situations. Yeah. Sometimes I get pissed off at house is upside down and kids are running riot. But actually, I'm myself.
Yeah.
And every relationship I had in addiction, I wasn't authentic. There were little moments of it. You're not always lying. I was kind to people, but ultimately you're just wearing this big mask, aren't you?
Yeah, and you never have that chance for the authentic self to come through, because the avoidance makes so much sense, because learning attachment is something that's modeled, and if it's not there, then you avoid to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And then you take the role on of caregiver for your mum's needs, and that becomes enmeshed, and it's like, well, that emerging self as you go through development just doesn't get any chance to come forward.
Yeah.
And it's that down the line, when it starts to settle down and you sort things out, that the authentic self is allowed to come through. And it sounds like that there's something about the people in your family loving you, but what I hear is you've learned to love yourself in the process and built that up in yourself, and then that knocks on into the other people around you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say fucking well done, mate. I really do.
Thank
because it's not only that, but the work that you've obviously gone on to do, which we'll come on to in a minute. But just to kind of close that section off, because it keeps coming back to me, and I feel like it's really important to ask you this. How important is the father figure in a child's life?
It's tough because I've never had one.
But you are one now.
But I am one. And what I've learned from my dad, I hold on to dearly, because he's taught me to be a better dad.
Right.
And in addiction, I couldn't see that. I always wanted to be a good dad, and the devastation of feeling like I was failing with my old children, I kept thinking, just like my dad.
Yeah.
And sadly, my mum used to say that in an argument sometimes, you're just like your dad. And it touched that, because I looked at him and thought, I don't want to be like him.
Yeah.
But he inspires me to be a better dad, and he still does to this day. And my dad, I believe, will have regrets on his deathbed, and I don't believe I will. And I'm actually loving, at the minute, it's challenging. I'm tired. Elsie sleeps with Bex and I sleep with Frank. So that impacts your relationship. And but I'm getting charged by my children. Been to the park this weekend and just had some dad and lad time with our Frank on the swings. Took him to football, and then I thought I'm going to take him to a rugby match on local rugby match, and he went rugby. And kids were having a team talk, and he ran on and put his head under the thing, and he's listening to team talk. And I'm watching these moments, and this is massive for me. And I think now seeing how Frank is with me, I think it's massively important. However, what I'll say about my mum is, my mum was bloody brilliant. Yeah. She's got ADHD. She reacts on emotion. She still can be a pain in the backside. She still causes me a bit of stress. But I am so grateful that my mum, when my dad wasn't there, made me still feel loved and safe. And the amount of love I got off her mother, I think it was enough for me. Yeah. But that said, I do realise that, I was going to school as a kid and saying, I've been with my dad at the weekend. And I always say it didn't bother me, but clearly if I was going making stories up from primary to secondary school, I'd make these stories up that I've met my dad. Yeah, he's taking me here, he's bought me some trainers. Well, I wasn't even in contact with him. So I think it's massively important. I think we need, a mother figure, we need a father figure. But the biggest thing is we need love. We need love. And sometimes, because someone asked me, I was at BAE Systems last week, and a woman started asking a question. She burst into tears, and she said, "Do you think not having your dad has caused all this? Because I'm a mum and the dad's not around." And I said, "If you can give them that much love and affection, which clearly I can tell you love them, it's enough. Don't think about it. But it's certainly important to have them two perspectives."
It is, and the reality is in the dysfunctional world that we live in, that somehow manages to still function. It happens. That's part of nature and part of how it is. And I think the most empowering thing is that we can take that into our own hands and go on a journey and heal and actually go on to do greater and bigger things. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it, in that, again, that polarity of like pain and joy and fulfillment. And it's like one can't exist without the other. So I think that's an important message, isn't it? That for whoever out there that's going through challenges or resonates with some of the stories that we've been talking about, it's going on that path, that journey. I want to talk to you about WhySup. You do some amazing work. Children, adults, you got some great clients. JD, BAE Systems, Vimto. Tell us about the main body of the work that you're doing now in organisations.
A lot of it centres around prevention and awareness and education. So we've got 15 different topics that we cover in schools, all centering around mental health and wellbeing. But it could be stress, anxiety, neurodiversity. We're doing workshops on that now. Drugs, alcohol, social media, phones. Part of the PHSE curriculum. Some schools we do the full PHSE curriculum. Other schools we do one-offs with them. We've also got partnerships with the likes of JD and Vimto, where we're the sort of ESG partner. We deliver education programs. So the program that we delivered last year with JD has won an award, which we're really proud for, a nice and shiny award. But it's them probably interactions that you have that no one see, or a kid comes forward and says, "My dad's an addict. Can you tell me about this?" I had it yesterday. These kids coming over to me asking questions and sharing their own personal experience. And not everyone in that room has experienced it. What I always say is, you will at some time in your life. If it's not you directly going through something, you'll know a family member struggles with, addiction or mental health struggles. So I love the school work. We do a lot in corporates because work is where I spent most of my time and tried to keep the two worlds separate. So employee wellbeing is really important. You've got organisations that sometimes you think this is a box tick. You've got others that you really think are bought into it. And I always cling on to them clients where I'm thinking we can do something special here. and you really do see them, you know, employers that really do care about the staff. And we work with both. We work with both. Sometimes we have one-offs, sometimes we have more consistent work, but we've got strong relationships. And then we work in treatment centres, which is one of my most favourite areas, because I really can have that group in the palm of my hand and knowing that you're giving them hope. Because I remember seeing someone who had a van and had his own business when I spoke to him, and he'd been in the rehab that I went in. And he came and did a little talk to us, and he said, I've got a coaching business. And all I could think of, how is someone who was rebuilding a life from a gambling addiction afforded a van? That to me was like, wow, that's like top of the mountain stuff. But an idea on a notepad, and that's all it was. WhySup spelt in a different way, because it's something that my mum used to say to me often.
All right.
You need to wise up. And I thought, do you know what? People think it means WhySup. It can mean that if it's applicable to you, but it's WhySup spelled in a different way. An idea on a notepad is now spoke to about 250,000 people across the world, actually. So we've done bits in Saudi and America online, but a lot of it's in the UK. And it started off with, that was putting one foot in front of the other, learning about business, being around the right sort of people, which is, funny enough, why I gravitated to you. I'd heard your name. You sort of hear people in the network that are doing things or sharing the story. I've been through something. I'm delivering at Accrington Stanley, and someone comes over at the end and goes, do you know Paul Howarth? This is his story. And I went outside and thought, I need to speak to this man. And I messaged you straight away. I'm in the car park at Accrington Stanley. Paul, it's Mark. Will you have a brew with me? I'm going through like a few things in business, and I just think you'll be able to help me. And you go, of course I will, pal. And these things happen that I've met so many fantastic people through having a lot more clarity in my life, living in line with my values, and people come into your life. But I've always had the guts to message you or, I'll do that, and take challenges on. Because I'll be honest, public speaking for me, people are brilliant at it. I've got much better over time, but my heart for years pounded out of my chest, and I had to find ways of controlling myself. But yesterday, I said that I've always got a drink at the side of me because I need a drink. But what I will speak from is here, and that's what I try and do with my talks, which can be emotionally draining sometimes, but I'm not after perfection or being polished in certain way. I try and wear my heart on my sleeve, and I support all my staff to do the same. Like, you be you. We'll guide you in certain ways, but it's about being authentic on stage as well. So I'm very, very proud of what we've built, but I want it to keep going. Maybe a bit of the addiction coming back. Can't switch off. Try and get balance. Sending emails late at night. I've got to really challenge myself of, let's practice what you preach here in your recovery of boundaries, and you've been a great help for that, mate, of I always look at you and think, I want a bit of that. And I'm not meaning like you've had success in business, but what I'm saying is, when I talked to you and we went to that school the other week, and you shared your story, I love watching you and learning from you. So if there's no ego in me, I'm looking at you thinking, I want to, but I want more than that. I want some peace. What you've got, you seem level, but I also love having chats with you, and you turn around and go, I'm not perfect, mate. I do this. So I like you being authentic with me, and I can learn from you. So WhySup is 8.5 years old. I feel like we're only just getting started, but also I don't want it to be the thing that puts me 6 feet under. And I feel like the level of stress sometimes, business, worrying about money, I worry about that sometimes. And I feel like you're trapped in it. However, did a clarity day with you the other week and some other fantastic business leaders. I've gone back, and there's been a little bit, not a madness, but business challenges. Oh, there's a tight spot there, this, that, and the other. But I've learned a lot from that day, And I've been quite peaceful since I've gone back. I'm not worrying. I'm doing all right. I'm doing the best I can today. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Stick to that plan. Like, have boundaries in place. And actually, there's been quite a lot of what I would describe as last year as madness. And I don't feel as stressed. I'm just all right.
Yeah.
I've had a lovely weekend. My cup's full. Go back to work, start again, and things happen. So I'm all right.
It's thank you, by the way. That does mean a lot. The I think it's so common that I reflect back. You've got this. You're getting forward in life, but you've got this behaviour, and for a period of time, you're kind of doing both, and they're both all right, and you're getting away with it. And all of a sudden, I remember a point where you're thinking, "Fucking hell, this is actually holding me back here." But then you're in a real conflict because you don't really know what the world looks like without having this thing here, the drink, the drugs, whatever. And it happens a lot with people, bright lad, QS, training, professional services, whatever line of work that you're in. It does happen, and then on the other side of it, you then set off. So you've got all this natural raw ability that you had at the start, and now you've got more lessons and more learning, and then you're like, wow, let's get forward with it. And you get forward, and then you end up in new territories that's unfamiliar as you start to scale, and then different levels of stress come at you. Yeah. And we used that to manage the stress in the first place. Yeah. And the stress comes, and so you're finding new ways of managing the stress. So it is that constant evolving nature, and it is, isn't it? It's part of it, and I know it's something I consciously reflect on, and I'm curious about in my own process, and I've realised that, and actually quite excited that it never the journey never ends. That doesn't mean that you're constantly trying to work through something. Yeah. We look at we can look at it in the negative concepts, but it gives you so much back on the other side. Yeah. And committing to that ongoing life of learning, I think is quite empowering. And I just want to say thanks for the level of work that you're doing, because I know you're having a massive impact on a lot of people's lives.
Thank you.
I've got 5 quick fire questions to ask you.
Fire away. Yeah,
they're the same ones that we asked Liberty. Actually, I thought we're going to kind of carry on with this because this works.
Am I going to get thrown here?
No. So, Mark, what is one daily habit that keeps you grounded?
I believe I'm authentic, honest and open, whether I feel good, whether I feel in between, or whether I'm struggling. I'm me. I'm fine in saying I'm struggling now, which I never used to be. I don't mean I wake up every morning and say, I'm feeling great, I'm feeling in between, but what I am doing, I can just really say like that. I'm having an off day.
Because the immediate thing that you think's come up is, I don't know, I meditate for 10 minutes in the morning or something. It's like something that someone does, but the best way for someone to feel grounded is to be themselves. Yeah. Wow.
And I know that's not always perfect.
No, I know, but I like that. Yeah. I do really like that. I'm having that one. What has trauma taught you about business and entrepreneurship?
That you've always got to be open-minded, you've always got to learn, and you can't do it on your own. Got something in my office saying great businesses are a team of people, not just one person. And it's hard that, because I've got a business that started off around my story and lived experience, but if I'm to scale and build, it's not about me, it's about us. And that's what trauma, you can't overcome it or process it on your own. I think you need support.
Well, it's interesting because these are quick fire, but
I'll go longer.
I'll tell you as your individual work and identity changes, the business identity changes.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Like you say, it started with Mark's story and journey, and then as you evolve into that, the more authentic self, all of a sudden the business starts to change its identity. Yeah. A limited belief you've had to release enable you to grow.
Probably that I'm not good enough. But on the flip side, we all want to be like the best at something, or I don't think perfectionism is the thing for me, but I always strive to be one of the better ones. But I'm okay at not being the strongest in the room. Again, going back to being authentic, I try.
Good enough.
Yeah, I try, and it's good enough for me.
Best advice that you could give for founders, business owners that are running on the fumes?
You're clearly passionate about it. Just don't let it come at a cost. Try and find balance. It will get out of balance. I think it's impossible when you're a founder. You're going to go through them moments, but just try and look after yourself. Try and have a good support network, both in the four walls of your home, but external as well. It's been good for me having Beck, so I can go home and say I'm struggling, but sometimes it's not the place. I've got support groups, and I've had the same therapist for 9 years, and I'm not always broken when I go and see him. He just helps me work things out.
Yeah.
So have a good 2 or 3 people, organisations, support network that you can just offload to.
Yeah.
Whether it's therapy or whether it's just business advice. So I just surround myself with good people.
Love that. And finally, Mark Murray, WhySup charity, organisation.
Yeah.
Finish this sentence. Transformation starts when?
God, it's a tough one, that. You put me on the spot. Transformation starts when you start making the tiniest of steps that can potentially go on to be huge steps.
Love that. I go back to whenever there's a problem, the room with the black walls and just buying a tin of paint.
Yeah.
That is a great anchor. It's right, what do I do next? Just go and buy a tin of paint.
And as you know, on that, I had to give myself a bit of a slap in the face the other day. My car's lease is up, and I went and waiting for my new car to arrive. And I went in and I looked at it and I said, "Has it not got electric seats?" And the woman's like, "No, like the build of it costs more this year." And I'm like, "Why is it at the minute everything's costing more and the services?" And my missus looked at me, she's heard my story, and she's like, "Electric seats?" 13 years ago, I lived in Bolton Hospital toilets, and now I've got that much of an ego that I'm bothered about electric seats, and I needed to slap myself in the face. And I got in the car, and I'm bursting into laughter with my missus. I said, "I'm a bit of a dick here, and I don't want to be that dick that's going, I've not got electric seats." So I can laugh at myself now and take the mick and say, "Do you know what?"
Yeah.
So I'm going to enjoy having a plastic lever for the next 2 years.
Well, great. That's a great note to finish on. Thank you so much, mate. I really enjoyed it. And Mark's episode will be up, and for all the details on WhySup and the organisation, we'll put them in the link below. If you're struggling, you're reaching out, if you're an organisation, watch this. Please get in touch with Mark and his team. They're absolutely brilliant at what they do.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching.